Let's begin now.
How's it everyone, Grant here. Welcome back to another camera comparison video featuring the all-new HTC U12 Plus. And I've already done a comparison between the U12 Plus and Google Pixel 2 XL. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a card somewhere up here for you to do that. But today I've got an all-new challenger, the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. So I guess battle of the pluses here, but I'm coming at you at 4K 60 frames per second because both these phones can do it. And the S9 Plus has that famous dual aperture camera setup on the rear. It's supposed to be great in low light. I think the U12 Plus also does a really nice job in low light. So I think we're going to be in for a really nice battle here. And like I usually do, I'll show you photos and videos in both good light and low light. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it useful. And with that being said, let's just get on with the rest of the video. Hey everyone, so here's some 1080p 30 frames per second footage coming from the rear-facing cameras on the HTC U12 Plus and the Galaxy S9 Plus. And just looking at the two in the viewfinder, the HTC U12 Plus looks like it's kind of blowing out the sky a little bit there, while the S9 Plus seems to have everything in pretty good focus. But as I pan up to the sky there, It seemed to adjust the exposure a little bit better on the U12 Plus to readjust for that sky. And the S9 Plus, at least in the viewfinder, has the much more saturated colors, while the U12 Plus has a lot more natural colors there. So that's just what I'm seeing in the viewfinder. You tell me what you're seeing now that it's been exported and is up on YouTube. But here's the cell tower. We'll go ahead and test the zoom on each. So 2x optical zoom on the U12 Plus. Nice and clear there and stable. And we'll zoom in 4x digitally. And that's also got the sonic zoom. So as I zoom in, my voice will probably get softer as it will focus more in on the audio closer to the subject. And this is actually pretty clean and clear and steady as I pan over. Still very steady at 4x zoom. Zooming back out, and we'll test out the S9. S9 also with 2x optical zoom there, and we can zoom in all the way. They have a 10x digital zoom here, so much farther in, and it's pretty clear here at 10x digital. You get really close, and the picture is still pretty steady here. I'll pan over to the right so you can kind of see how steady it is at full zoom there, and clear too. Zooming back out, and we'll test autofocus here in the post with the U12 Plus first. So pretty quick autofocus and refocus speed there. And one more time. So really good focus here on the U12 Plus and on the S9 Plus now. Same thing, really speedy autofocus and refocus. And we can go ahead and test out stabilization as I walk down the stairs. So both of these should be stabilizing pretty well at 1080p 30 frames per second. But you can be the judge of what you prefer here and what you see. And I'll take one last pan around the park here at 1080p 30 frames per second. And so here's some footage at 1080p 60 frames per second, and I want to shoot some moving objects to show you the difference in the frame rates here. So let me know what you think about this footage here at 1080p 60 frames per second. And we can go ahead and test stabilization. So I'll just go ahead and walk here holding both devices so you can see what the stabilization looks like at 60 frames per second should you choose to want to film at this frame rate. Hey there everyone, so here's a 4K 30 frames per second clip, again the same scene in the park. There's a 6-minute time limit of recording on the U12 Plus and a 10-minute time recording on the S9 Plus. Same observations with the colors. S9 Plus much more saturated in the viewfinder. U12 Plus looks much more natural here. And we can do the zoom test at the cell tower. So first 2x optical zoom on the U12 Plus. Sonic zoom is turned on. So go 4x digital. Looking nice and clear and steady. We'll pan over to the right. And as I zoom back out, my voice will probably become a lot louder and clearer because of that sonic zoom. And then the zoom 2x optical on the S9 Plus. And full 10x digital zoom here. Looking a lot clearer than it did at 60 frames per second. Pretty steady too. As I pan over to the right and zoom it back out here. Test the autofocus speeds now, U12 Plus. And refocus. So still some pretty quick focus and refocus speeds here for the U12 Plus and now the S9 Plus. Same thing, still very quick autofocus and refocus here. So stabilization test at 4K 30 frames per second. As I again walk down the stairs, of course 4K is more of a challenge to stabilize, so we'll see how both these phones do and compare. So that's 4K 30 frames per second on both phones there. And here's some 60 frames per second video being shot at 4K. So I want to shoot something that kind of moves a little bit fast for you to see the difference in the frame rates here. So let me know what you think about this 60 frames per second at 4K video footage. And I can go ahead and test stabilization here at 60 frames per second in 4K. So if you just want to actually shoot in this frame rate and move around, this is the kind of stabilization you'd expect from each of these phones here. Hey everyone, so here's a front-facing camera test with the U12 Plus at 1080p 30 frames per second, its highest resolution, and the S9 Plus is set at 1440p Quad HD, which is its highest resolution, just to give you a feel of what each phone can do here in the outdoors in the sunlight here. So not the best light, it's the afternoon light, but it should give you a fairly good idea of how the cameras adjust for exposure and the changing conditions in the lighting. As you can see there, the sun is behind me, and they're both kind of blowing out that sky as you would expect. And I'll keep panning around so you can kind of see the changing lighting conditions and how the phones perform here. And we'll come back around and I'll do a little bit of stabilization test. So I'll just walk and hold these phones about an arm's length from me, and hopefully this gives you a good idea of what the stabilization is like on these front-facing cameras. Hey everyone, so here's some quick low light footage from both cameras, and I must say in the viewfinder at least, both cameras are really brightening up the scene. It's pretty dark out here right now, so they're doing pretty good as far as brightness. There seems to be a little bit more noise on the U12 Plus though. But let's test the zoom here. So 2x zoom there on the U12 Plus. And I'll zoom in all the way 4x digitally. And of course that's going to be very, very noisy here. So we'll zoom back out. And I'll go ahead and zoom in on the S9 Plus. So this I think can go all the way 10x digital still, and that's going to be pretty much unusable. So I'll pull it back to about half that at 5x zoom. Still pretty grainy. And maybe 2x zoom there. Not as bad, but still pretty grainy. So I wouldn't be using the zoom obviously in some pretty low light situations. And we'll test the stabilization by walking here. So a lot of times it'll be pretty jittery here in low light as far as stabilization goes. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of how both these cameras perform here in some low light at 1080p. And And so here's some 60 frames per second video being shot at 1080p from both phones. Again, just want to show you some fast motion video so you get a better sense of the frame rates here in low light. And we go ahead and test some stabilization here and see what the stabilization looks like while shooting in 60 frames in 1080p. And also note that the Galaxy S9 Plus has a much narrower field of view, so the U12 Plus at 1080p 60 seems to fit more in the frame. When we're back shooting the same scene, this time in 4K, and so still both cameras, at least in the viewfinder, are brightening up the scene pretty well. It's definitely darker than this in real life here, from what I'm seeing. And so we'll test the zoom again. 2x zoom on the U12 Plus there, and 4x zoom, and it's still very grainy and probably unusable, but that's expected in some pretty low light here. And the S9 Plus now, so that's about 2x zoom there on the S9 Plus, which isn't too bad really. We'll go half zoom at about 5x. And that's not looking very good, and of course 10x will get totally blown out, as you can see there. And we'll zoom it all the way back out. And we can test stabilization here at 4K. So of course I'll just walk and talk again. And pay attention to see if you see any jitteriness, because that's usually what you see as far as stabilization goes in low light. But again, hopefully this gives a good idea of what the 4K footage is going to look like here in some pretty low light. So here we have some 60 frames per second video in low light being shot at 4K on both the U12 Plus and Galaxy S9 Plus. So again, just wanted to show you some high motion video so you get a better sense of the frame rates in low light here. And I'll test the stabilization here in 4K 60 frames per second in low light. Just walk around here so you get a better sense of what the stabilization looks like in some low light here, 60 frames in 4K. And so lastly, here's some front-facing footage in some pretty low light here. And both these cameras are actually doing a pretty decent job of lighting up the scene again. And I'll pan around here just so you can see the changing light. And I'll do some quick stabilization. I'll just walk here so you can kind of see how these stabilize and what that looks like here in some low light. Might be a bit jittery just because of how dark it is, but hopefully this gives you a better idea of how these front-facing cameras will perform in some pretty low light here. Hey everyone, so I just want to end this video with some front-facing camera footage in some pretty optimal lighting conditions here. I want to give both of these front-facing cameras every opportunity to look good, so I've got them at their highest resolution as well. The U12 Plus at 1080p and the S9 Plus at Quad HD or 1440p. So let me know if you see a difference and which one you prefer. Also, let me know what you thought of all the photos and videos. Let me know what phone you thought performed better in still photos, which one performed better for videos, maybe one performed better in good light versus low light, maybe just like one better overall. So let me know in the comment section which one you preferred and why, and let's go ahead and continue the discussion down there. And as always, thanks for watching.